Okay, great. So I am Alexa Hamill. I am one of the associate directors for advising and programming. I am also an alum of the college. I graduated in 2013. So in addition to doing individual advising, which we do on everything career related, we also, or I also advise on graduate programs, primarily focusing on pre-law. I oversee Barnard Connect, which is our great networking site that's exclusive for Barnard students and alums, and I oversee our Mentors in Residence program. So let's get started. I'm just going to share my screen so you can see the PowerPoint. Okay. Okay, so this is career exploration, as you guys know, and this particular session is going to focus on strategies for self-assessment. So this is part of a larger series for career exploration. I know we had the first session and we have a few more coming up for career exploration, so definitely take a look at that under the event section on Handshake and sign up for more. So in addition to the career exploration series, we have other awesome series as part of 75 events that we're having for the summer. So in addition to doing career exploration, we also have sessions on career skills, graduate programs. I just finished one on pre-law, so definitely take a look at that. They are all listed under the event section on Handshake. Sorry, I just want to make sure I'm keeping track of time. Okay, cool. So for today's agenda, we are first going to be talking about the career exploration process and what exactly does it mean to be doing career exploration. Then we're going to be talking about self-assessment, which is going to be focusing more so on, I would say, the more informal way of assessing your interests and possible careers and how those align. Then we'll speak about formal assessment. So those are assessments that we offer in the office. And I could speak a little bit more to maybe why would somebody want a more formal way of assessing career options versus maybe doing something a little bit more informal, which is the self-assessment. And then lastly, we're going to be talking about how to explore careers and then how to take your interests and can we fit that into a possible career that aligns with those interests and values that you have. Okay, so first let's go over just what the career exploration process is. I think career exploration as a career skill is probably one of the harder ones because there's no really clear or set way that you can be exploring your career, but it's so critical that you take the time to explore what your interests are, because then it'll make the rest of the process that much easier for you. Meaning when you're networking, you have that foundation. When you are tailoring your resume, you know exactly how to tailor it based on what you're applying for. When you're job searching and you're on an Indeed, which is a huge job board, you're not getting really overwhelmed with all of the options. So by, again, really taking the time and not kind of quickly just going right over to maybe what's a little bit later in the actual application process, this will allow you to really have a game plan so you feel less overwhelmed and really confident knowing what your interests are and what you should be looking for and how you should be preparing your application materials. So first and foremost, know yourself, opening yourself up to possibilities, especially if maybe you really are in a spot right now where you don't know what's out there, or you've heard of a couple positions, but you really don't know what that means. What does somebody in that position do? Be open to possibilities. It's okay if your options are going to change. This is the process where you can maybe make a plan in the beginning and it can change. So I think being really flexible and open up to possibilities is going to be really critical. Researching the world of work and possible careers and making your ideas more real. So again, how can you take maybe what seems like just an idea or something that sounds really interesting, and how can you make it into a career and something that you would enjoy, be motivated and passionate about? And then finally, choosing a goal or a focus. So once you figure out how to make it more real, what exactly does it mean to take my interest, put it in this type of a job, and now how can I actually experience that job firsthand by taking an opportunity in that industry, in that job function, so you can gain experience. And then if necessary, like I said, reassess. So amazing if you figure out, first go around, this is exactly in fact what you want to do. Amazing, continue down that path. But again, and more likely what is going to happen is needing to reassess and say, okay, I really enjoyed these aspects of the job, but what do I want to make sure is not in my next job? And what do I mean to make sure is maybe more part of that job, which a lot of times is you're only really able to know by actually taking on that opportunity. Okay, so next we're going to be talking about self-assessment. So before I go to the next slide, like I said, self-assessment is the most, I would say, informal in terms of assessment. This is really just, you can think of more as like brainstorming, kind of being able to ask yourself some questions that I think sometimes you would even be surprised you already know about yourself. I think sometimes it's just a matter of either having an advisor or, just having an ability to know what types of targeted questions to ask yourself, because again, you would be surprised sometimes when you ask yourself these questions how much you already know about your interests. So here are a few examples of some exploratory questions that I think would be great to go over with an advisor, to go over with yourself, and again, actually see how much you already know about what you're interested in. So I'll take a pause here so you can read some of these questions. So again, these questions are really straightforward. They, are pretty simple. And again, I think that sometimes asking these questions, even if it may not result in, oh, this makes sense, I'm going to be exploring this career, at least you're starting to explore what your interests are, what you're really good at, what you value. So that way also when you do meet with an advisor or when you are searching and researching on your own, you're already starting to think about, what am I looking for in a job description? What are the types of questions I want to ask when maybe I'm starting to network? So now let's go over career assessments. So again, I think career assessments are really great, and these are our more formal assessments that we offer for students and alums that really don't even know what maybe jobs are out there. So maybe you're doing a self-assessment and you're like, I really am having difficulty kind of pinpointing what those interests are. There's that side. And the other side is I have students and alums that have a super broad range of interests. Maybe they're interested in STEM, the arts, and seemingly really different types of fields, and how to combine those to either figure out how to take seemingly very different industries and create something that's a great blend. Or, and you'll see when I go over these assessments, maybe it's more so about, what do I want to make sure is part of my job, and what are my interests that may just be part of my lifestyle, my hobbies, things that I enjoy, but may just not be part of my actual job. So let's go over what some of these career assessments are. So there are 4 that we're going to be going over today. One is going to be related to your interests, one is related to your personality, then we have skills, and then we have values. So first and foremost, we have the strong interest inventory. So this here, it's saying to you, what fields are you drawn to? What types of work motivate you? And what would you like to do? So, there's a lot that you can go into about these assessments, and I don't want to spend too much time focusing on any one. But basically what this assessment is going to tell you is how your interests, what it does is it compares your responses to women, because it's a gendered assessment that said that they're interested and satisfied in these careers. So it's not necessarily to say this is what you're going to be awesome at, this is what you're skilled at. This is purely saying, based on your responses and what you listed as your interests, these women in these careers responded similarly. So it could be inferred that you could also be satisfied and interested in these careers. Again, the assessment starts off a little bit broader, so it'll actually tell you where your interests lie, not just within careers, but within coursework, so academics, leisure activities, personal characteristics, and it purposely does that again because it wants to say, you may have a really wide range of interests and we want to let you know what those are. So then as the assessment goes on, it starts to narrow your interest in more so related to careers. But again, it lets you know that your interests could be very similar or it could be very different in terms of what you actually enjoy in a job and maybe just what are some things that you want to keep as part of your lifestyle in terms of hobbies, volunteer work, etc. Then we have the Myers-Briggs, the MBTI. So some of you may have taken, I know, some informal versions online. We do offer the full formal version, which is important because it could be slightly different for the results. But what this will do is it will give you a 4-letter personality type. So this will relate to what your preferences are. So when it relates to your preferences, what's great is it'll say these would be your preferred work responsibilities or working tasks, and this is your preferred working environment. So working tasks would be things like being able to create a vision for a company, be maybe a little bit more big picture. It could be that you're somebody who's super structured and likes to be really involved in the details of how to actually execute something. Or like I said, in terms of more work environment, it'll relate more to how collaborative is it? Do you have time to have a balance of being collaborative, but also time to be working more independently? Do you want to be part of a company that has traditions and values and more of a family environment? So in one sense, you'll get a really good idea about when you're looking at a job description, what are the things that you're going to be looking for because you know that that would be a preference for you. And some of the things that are maybe not as easily seen when you're doing research, like again, maybe more of those like, what are the values? Those are great questions that you can start thinking about when you're doing more of the networking and asking questions that only somebody maybe within that company can really tell you in terms of insights. Then we're going to be going to skills. So these are skills. It's saying how good are you at something, and which is really important, how much do you enjoy it? So I think what's really important, and at the bottom you'll see with the burnout skills that you want to avoid, is things that you're not good at and also things that you don't enjoy. So I have students and alums that say that they're really skilled at, doing a lot of quantitative things, but they want to be involved in a more creative industry. So there are always ways that you can acquire skills. I think it's really important to have how much do you actually enjoy it as part of that equation, because you'll see in a job, it's not a class that you finish after a semester. Maybe you didn't love it, but there's kind of an endpoint at some point. You really want to not only feel confident in what your skills are, but how much do you enjoy it? And kind of on the flip side, if you're thinking about, actually, I think I would really enjoy this, but maybe I just don't necessarily have the skills yet, those are things that you can also work with alumni who are in those jobs, advisors, in terms of figuring out how can you acquire those skills so you can be successful in that job. And then finally, we have values. So how important are various workplace and lifestyle factors for you? So I do have a short little exercise, and you'll see a little bit more what I mean when it comes to these values. And then we'll go over why values are really important when you are thinking about possible careers. So I'm going to stop sharing quick to launch a poll. It's the first time I'm doing a poll, so hopefully these are good. And I also see I have some questions coming in, so hold your questions for at the end. We'll have time for Q&A in case I end up going over any questions that you're already thinking about. Okay. So sorry, I'm just going to fix one thing. So tell me if you guys got that. And even though the question says to rank them, I don't want you to rank them. I just want you to choose which of these three values are most important to you, because you can only choose one option. So choose the value that is most important to you. And let me know if this isn't working for you guys in your end, because again, this is the first time I'm using this feature. Oh, it's working? Great. Oh, I'm so thrilled. A little nervous about this. Okay. So again, I'm going to end it right now. So click. It's anonymous, so I won't see it. Did you guys click on an option? Because it's saying that I don't have it. Okay, I'll relaunch it. Are you, just write in the chat if you're not, it worked for you guys? Okay, that's weird. That's weird. All right, I'm gonna do it one more time. I just wanna see. Okay, yeah, just make sure that you're hitting what's most important to you, and then you're hitting submit. Okay, so I'm gonna end it in 3 seconds. Okay, let's see. That is so weird. You guys can see that it's coming up as no results. Okay, so since the poll isn't working,
it's coming up with the results for me.
Oh, it's coming up for you guys? So maybe I just can't see it?
38% challenging, 62% enjoyable, 0% predictable.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I'm so happy you guys. You would think that the host of the event could see it, but I'm not seeing it. So sorry, whoever just said that, thank you so much. Can you just quickly put in the chat, because I can't see the results for some reason, can you just put in the chat what it's showing for each of those? Awesome. Thank you so much for including that. Okay, so you can hear 30% challenging, 62 enjoyable, 0% predictable. Okay, totally fine. I'm going to put in, and we'll talk more about this, but this is just more so you can also see out of this population kind of where you fall. There's no right or wrong by any means. I think it's just interesting to see at this point where you guys are valuing each of these at this time. So let me see if can pull up my second poll, which it's not letting me do. So instead, let me see. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, because again, this is being a little funky for me, I'm going to put in the chat box the 3 options for the next one. And then finally, and then for these 3, which one is the most important for you? No, you don't have to answer in the chat. So really how this works is you're supposed to be, but it's just difficult to do this obviously with a large group. The way that you're really supposed to do this is you're supposed to put it in order. So it kind of forces you to say what is most valued, what you value, what you least value. And again, these could all be things that you value. Like I think all of these aspects are really important, but what's important about these values and setting a forcing you to kind of choose what's most important, what's kind of important but not most important, what's a little bit less, is it gives you a really good idea when you're, again, doing kind of these networking conversations, doing your research, like what are your non-negotiables? It's really important to know that. You can love the job, but if it's a really hard commute for you, that can really take away from your experience and your motivation for it. So it is important not only to see what your interests are, what your skills are, but how do these values really align with it? Because you can be really, really skilled at something, but if it doesn't align with these values, you wouldn't enjoy necessarily what you're going to be doing. Again, if you like really fast-paced environment, you could be really good at something, but maybe it's a little slower paced. Maybe you're not in an environment where you're doing different things each day, you're doing kind of similar things each day, which again, it's important for you to have variety. So these are all things that, again, you may not necessarily be able to necessarily research and find online, but when you're doing networking, which is so critical as part of the exploration process, these are questions that you can ask. Some of these questions you can even ask in the form of an interview, again, because it's really important for you to know how these values align with what you personally have and how is that going to keep you motivated in what you're doing. So these were just 3 examples and you can kind of see how they're grouped. So what's great is at the end, you kind of have this list of these are the things that are most valued. These are the things that, again, are valuable, but not the most, and so on and so forth. So it's, again, really forcing you to kind of narrow in what the options are, and maybe what options as a result are kind of off the table. And there are a lot more than what I had. These were just a couple of examples. So let's go back to, so these were the 3. Again, you would normally rank them. Okay. So now that you have done these assessments, both the formal ones as well as the more informal ones and these brainstorming questions, now it's a matter of how can you take what you know and actually fit it in the form of a career. So now you gathered all this information about yourself, you did this exploration process. Now let's make those ideas real and let's figure out how to put that in, your first goal or your first interest in terms of now putting it into a job function. Okay, so exploring careers. So these are some online resources that you can do. So first and foremost, start with a title or a field. I feel like Google is something that is undervalued for whatever reason. I mean, Googling it and coming up with resources, places where you can just learn more about the field, where you can find actual opportunities in the field, like just start there and see what comes out of that. For more specifically with regards to exploring job titles, there's a site called ONET. If you just Google ONET, it will come up. And what's great about this site is you can put in a keyword, and it could be a job function, an industry, and it'll come up as a profile, and it'll tell you what somebody in that job typically does. So what are some of those tasks? What are any required skills or knowledge you need to know? For example, what are the percentage of people that are getting their master's in this particular career? And it'll also give you related occupations and links to profiles where you can explore related occupations, because maybe you're seeing this is a really cool job, not exactly in line with what I thought, and then something similar will come up. And then it also has resources at the bottom of the profile where it'll say if you're interested in exploring actual jobs in those fields, or in that field, I should say, these are possible job sites, or, sometimes they'll have professional membership associations, things like that, where you can be more a part of that cohort of individuals. And then job listing or general or niche sites. So, again, kind of similar like Googling it. I think that actually looking at job descriptions, both at the junior level, but then also at the senior level. So, I mean, I think it's important to know what are you going to be doing right away and what are you interested in, but it's also important to know, are you working towards a goal that maybe, you know, at this point you need more experience for, but you're working towards something larger and seeing how those starting positions fit in with your larger goal. And that way also you're kind of widening your net in terms of what those maybe more junior level positions look like, because instead of just focusing on job titles, you can focus also on skill. So if you know as somebody at this senior level has X, Y, and Z skills because you looked at the job description, and they said that people in this position, they're looking for these qualifications, they'd be doing these things. You can look for those transferable skills, I'm sure, in a number of industries, which we can also talk about when you decide what that path is. And we can also talk about with an individual advisor what some niche sites are. So for example, Idealist is great for nonprofits, Media Bistro is great for media jobs. So also seeing where specific jobs can be found on these niche sites. Okay, then again, exploring careers, networking, and hearing from people that are in those careers. I can't stress enough how important it is. Doing research on your own will only take you so far. Where I think actually hearing from people, I think is great because you're hearing from experts. Like I call people who are in these jobs experts because they went through the similar process of they were also interested in this field. Maybe they tried something else out. Maybe they didn't experience it they thought was super valuable and really critical to get to where they are now. So just looking at somebody's LinkedIn profile, just Googling a job won't necessarily give you that information that is critical for you to know when you're planning your options. Because maybe on their LinkedIn profile, they have a position, but maybe they were like, actually, in retrospect, I really would have suggested doing something like this. Or, you know, I wish I kind of explored other options and it wasn't necessary for me to have to do this exact position to get to where I am now. And then, like I said, there are also insights that you can't necessarily do based on just doing research. Is it a fast-paced environment? Is it collaborative? Is there, you know, more independence, not as close-knit supervision, things like that. Things that are really, really critical because, again, there are other components, just not what you're doing on a day-to-day, that's going to contribute to your satisfaction and happiness in a role. So these are awesome ways that we have more formal opportunities through Beyond Barnard, as well as just other great networking sites. So we have career insights panels where we have industry specific panels to hear from people that are in those careers, externships, so actually hands-on experience, job shadowing, things like that. Mentors in residence, which I oversee, where we have a weekly alum who does like a more informal chats with small groups of students. Barnard Connects, which I also oversee, is our networking site exclusively for Barnard students and alums. And if you just Google Barnard Connect, it should be the first option that comes up. If you don't yet have an account, you can create one there. Again, this is exclusively for students and alums. All of the alums that are on there voluntarily chose to be there, and there's over 600 right now. So I think that Barnard Connect, not only is it exclusive for Barnard students and alums, but I think that for students that are a little maybe reluctant to do the cold emailing or feeling like, oh, you know, I'm nervous to reach out to somebody I don't know, knowing that these alums voluntarily are on there and that they're actively seeking to help students can be a nice kind of way of getting acclimated to networking. But then, of course, there's LinkedIn. I'm not going to go too much for the sake of time into the networking component. And we are also doing networking sessions as well. So if you want to know more about the details for that, definitely take advantage of that. And then that kind of leads to informational interviews, which for those of you who don't know what that is, that means that you're interviewing, but in the sense that you didn't get called in for an interview, you're not applying for a job. This is an informational interview in terms of you're using an interview style to get more information about possible careers. So you're not getting an interview for a job, you're using this interview to gather information from an alum, from somebody in the career who's actually doing that. Oops. So these are some great questions that I would suggest that you look at, think about when you're kind of planning for that conversation. So I'm not, again, going to speak too much to it because we do have networking sessions, which I highly recommend that you take advantage of. But again, these are questions that you're going to get really great information from, and to be able to maybe learn from an expert's mistake or to follow in a similar path because it worked out really well and they were successful as a result, really critical in terms of what you're thinking about. Okay. So exploring a path or two. So after you complete this self-assessment, career research, now you actually want to choose a focus. So these are ways that you can gain related skills and experience. And you can see there are so many different ways that you can acquire these related skills and experiences, not just in the form of an internship, but things that you can do on campus, student jobs, things you're doing in the classroom, community involvement, volunteer, again, by not just focusing on the job title, but actually by focusing on the skills you want to acquire, you can see how many different ways that you can acquire these really transferable skills that you can leverage when you're doing a resume or when you're interviewing. So reassessing as you learn. So you can see before where I said explore a path or two and reassessing. So these points are related to the fact that eventually you're going to choose a focus, right? So, you know, I say you won't necessarily know for sure if you actually are going to be happy with a career until you take on that opportunity, whether it be in the form of an internship, like I said, doing something similar on campus, if it's a full-time opportunity. You won't really know, I think, until you actually do it firsthand and are doing what somebody in that job is doing day in and day out. So eventually you're gonna pick a focus, but that focus may change. What you think may be your long-term goal, you can see can slightly transition. So maybe it's something slightly different. Maybe it's just a different department, but within the same industry, or it can be a completely different career change where you're changing an industry and changing a job function. I can't stress enough how important it is to take the time to reassess and know that everybody at some point is going to have to reassess, whether it's just to reassess and say, oh, I'm still really enjoying it, I want to stick to it, or I want to reassess because I kind of want to pivot. Like I said, if you're not satisfied in your job, if you're not interested, if you're not motivated, it carries on to kind of how you're feeling in your life. And so you want to make sure that if you're not happy with a career, take the time to reassess. If you need to kind of do the steps that we already spoke about again, because maybe what you went into the original assessments with was not the information that you know now, take the assessments again, ask these questions again, and then reassess to see where that leads you. So ask that about yourself, about the world of work, what's going on in the world of work. I mean, this is now a perfect example of what's going on in the world of work, how important anything with remote learning is going, online education, anything helping with remote working, things like a Zoom as a platform, things like that. So assessing where we are in the world of work. And exploring new things, go outside your comfort zone. You know, this is your opportunity to try things out, see what you like, because every time you do try something out, you learn, even if it's just one more piece of information you didn't know before, a really valuable piece that you're going to take with you when you're assessing the next opportunity. And this relates to every opportunity as a learning experience. I know it's really corny, but it's so true. Some of the opportunities that I took on that I really didn't enjoy were super valuable because it led me towards what I'm doing now and what I love to do. So being able to be really confident in what I like, but also what I don't like. So that way, when I'm doing informational interviewing, when I'm interviewing, I know what those things are. And I can be more aware of what that is by actually taking on an opportunity that may not have been the most ideal for me. So here are some next steps that you can think about following this presentation. So make a career exploration appointment or take the assessment. You can make a career exploration appointment and then ultimately take the assessment, make an assessment appointment and realize maybe it's just more of the informal brainstorming with an advisor. With the assessments though, I will say it is required that you meet with an advisor. We don't just send you the assessments because we want to make sure that we're working with you to make sure that the assessments are actually the best option for you and maybe not something else. Exploring the professional world online, doing research and in person with networking. Again, we're getting there. Maybe you're not networking in person, but take advantage of maybe having more time to be doing these Zoom calls, having phone conversations. Choose a focus or two. Again, eventually, you may realize that there are actually a couple of things that you're really interested in, but at some point, choosing a focus, maybe choosing 2 focuses in the immediate future is really critical because at some point you want to really take actionable steps to really assess in real time if that is your career interest. Gain experience, repeat the process, reassess. Again, it's super critical. It's okay to not love what you're doing. I think the reason why people say your first job is not your last job is because for so many people, it's extremely difficult to know without actually having the experience where you're going to end up. So I think that it's important to gain the experience, but then reassess if that is actually something that you're enjoying or if it's going to be something similar or completely different, and kind of give yourself the space and understanding that you don't have to be hard on yourself if it will look very different than what you originally thought. And as always, Beyond Barnard is here to support you in any way that we can. Again, even with career exploration, I would say a lot of times there's no formal plan. Students are kind of coming into our office and don't feel like you have to have a formal plan to meet with us. I think some of the best conversations come out of just that informal brainstorming, students and alums that are really open to hearing suggestions. So definitely don't feel like you have to have a plan to meet with us. In addition to the awesome programs that we're having as part of summer colloquium, we're also doing individual advising appointments, and we're open through the summer. So definitely feel free to schedule appointments on Handshake. So just enough time for questions. I'm happy we have a good amount. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to take a sip of water. And now let's take a look at, so I know a couple of you already put in questions. Okay, so I'll start with the questions that are already in there. If you do have a question though, and you didn't already put it in the chat, feel free to put it in and I'll kind of just go in the order of how they came in. So I think there was another one up here that I didn't see. Okay, so where are the assessments? Are they online? The assessments are online. Again, you wouldn't be accessing it because that initial conversation you would have with an advisor first, just to assess if, in fact, the assessments are the best way for you to start the process. And if so, we can then say what assessments we suggest based on where you're at. How do we learn about networking sessions? So if you go under the event section on Handshake, you can see all of the events that we have as part of Summer Colloquium. We also have resources under Handshake as well. And if you go to Barnard Connect, or when you're on Barnard Connect, something that I think students don't take advantage of enough is we have guides on Barnard Connect under the resources section as well. And all of the guides that are on Barnard Connect are related specifically to networking and those questions that you may have about how to draft an initial message to a potential mentor, questions and topics you can talk about during your informational interview. So definitely take advantage of that. How does the career exploration appointment work? What do you mean by advisor? So I'm an advisor. We're career advisors. That's just the title that we have. So that's what I mean when I say advisor. So the initial career exploration appointment would work very similar to kind of what I had in the beginning. What we do as advisors is kind of assess where you're at. So again, I kind of said the reasons why someone may be doing more of a self-assessment versus a formal assessment. So as advisors, that's where we really can say, based on where you're at, we would suggest you do this. So career assessment appointments, I would say especially, can look so different. There's really not one way that we do it. I think it's super dependent on just what the student's not only interested in, but where they are in the process. So if you are interested, definitely feel free to make an appointment with a Beyond Barnard advisor. So those are all the questions I see. If you have another question, put it in, or if I maybe missed your question from earlier, feel free to put it back into the chat and I'm happy to answer it. You're welcome, Sydney. You're welcome, no worries. You're welcome, Sophia. So I'll give it one more minute because I know sometimes it could be a little delayed in the chat. So I think that's it for now. Thank you guys again so much for coming. Any questions you have, my email's in the chat. Feel free to email me, make an appointment with an advisor, and definitely take advantage of the other awesome sessions that we have as part of Summer Colloquium. So thank you guys again. Take care.